Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builders Supply. This video is to bring you a closer look at the Cal Royal number FBG6 US3. This is what they call a solid brass single route extension flush bolt with round end bright brass. Okay, so let's take a look at it. This is a flush bolt. That means it's going to be mortised flush to the edge of the door and is a bolt. Okay, when you throw the bolt up and down via the finger mechanism that's here, you're going to extend the bolt, whether it be installed at the top of the door or at the bottom of the door. Very simple mechanism in the backside. And that's what the FBG6 is. The US3 stands for polished brass. They say solid brass. It's because the scalp plate is solid brass, then polished with a lacquer applied to it. Okay. There's obviously I believe that's what is called spangled. If you grew up in the 1970s and played whatever in the alley, skateboarding or BMX bikes or whatever you did in the alley, the garbage cans were spangled. They were galvanized. They called it spangled. So a galvanized sort of steel. I believe that's spangled. I haven't seen one of those garbage cans in a while. Why do I know that? Well, I spent a lot of time in the alley. In Chicago, where I grew up, we lived at about the 300 West block on a street by the name of Newport. And Lake Michigan, a million years ago, its shoreline was at a different place than it is now. Well, the shoreline was basically where my house was, and we were at the top of the hill, and it's about 6320 or so is where that would. So in our alley, we had a cool little hill going down, so you can do lots of fun things out there. So I've always thought the garbage cans were interesting because of that silver sort of look. I do hope that's what is called spangled, because I've just gone on about it. The scalp plate can be done in lots of different finishes. Polished. It's a nice brass. The reason it's a nice brass is because of the base material. When you are polishing the natural material itself or doing some sort of process to it, like brushing stainless, you're going to get the true finish out of it. This is, of course, more delicate than that because they've polished it, so any contact you make with it will reduce that, but the lacquer is there to prevent that. So it's available in different finishes, and let's take a look at what those finishes are. US 10B for oil rub bronze, US 15 satin nickel, 15A for antique nickel, 26 polished chrome, 26D satin chrome, 3 US 3 for polished brass, US 4 satin brass, US 5 antique brass. This client actually ordered US 4 satin brass. Cal Royal didn't have those in stock, so it was wait, or you want to take US 3 polished brass. The client elected to just say, give me polished brass. That would be fine, and that's what we've done here. Moving through the description of the item, single route. What does that mean? Well, what that means is very simply, when you are manufacturing the door, when you are prepping the door for this, the prep for this is relatively easy. It's a one-step process. There's only one route that you have to make. And let's put the dimensions on this quickly. The width of this is 3/4 inch. The overall length of the body, the overall length is 7 inch. So you would be at 6 1/4, right? 6 and 5/8 would be the dimension. 6 5/8. Yeah, 6 5/8 is where you would come. At 6 5/8 is where you would plunge down to your center, and you would create that radiused end, and then you would route a single route out the end of your door through the top or bottom rail. You're finished. Obviously, you'll need to make multiple passes with your plunge router, increasingly deeper till you get to the proper depth, which would be about 5/8. Okay, so that's what single route is. Put your router in, move it, you're done. You'll have to do this back and forth, obviously. And when you're prepping this, if you're going to prep this in the field, that'd be easy to do. The second best friend to the woodworker is, in my opinion, the caliper. Your router is your best friend. The caliper, without the caliper, the router's not as powerful. So what I like to do when I can, I'll either take dimensions from the template, or I will put my caliper on it, which I always do, because I want to see exactly how close I'm going to be. And based on my experience, after I route something, I'm going to know how much work I need to do after I route it based on the dimensional drawing. And it also helps eliminate the possibility that I've looked at the wrong template, or there's been a design change in the hardware that hasn't been picked up, which is very rare. A design change in the hardware that's not been picked up in the paperwork. Whenever you can do a reality check on the material, that would be a good thing to do. And make any adjustments. Yeah, you better believe if that says 0.75, if it's 3/4, but my caliper tells me that I'm 0.758, which is what it's telling me, yeah, I'm going to get that 0.08 out of it. I'm not going to have to go back in there with a chisel and try to clean that up or reposition my template. I'm adjusting accordingly, etc. is the point of all of that. But routing for this would be easy. You'd put your template on the edge of the door, depending on what you're doing or how you're doing it. Really simple and straightforward. Clearly, I would be using a 3/4 inch diameter 2-flute carbide bit. I don't want to have to use a 1/2 inch bit, do the 3/8 radius separately here, and then do something else. You can, if you say to yourself, well, I'm never going to use a 3/4 inch diameter 2-flute bit again. Sure, whatever it takes. You might have a 3/4 inch Forstner bit that you can do the edge of this, and then prep it with, whatever diameter router bit you have. It's going to include a strike plate as well. It's giving me trouble coming out of the bag. And a bit of a complementary finish, about 1.5 inches by 5/8. This is very thin. This is probably 30 thousandths. Are you going to mortise this? Maybe. Can you? It's 49 thousandths, so it's almost the thickness of it's basically the thickness of a commercial kick plate. I would sure opt to try to chisel that, but the bottom line is, chiseling that small amount, you're just not going to have a lot of success, in my opinion. You might try to route it, but you're just not going to be taking much off. So that may be surface mounted. Speaking of the thickness of things, let's measure the thickness of the bolt coming out of the edge. 0.316 diameter. Its projection, about 3/4 inch. Okay. Chamfered edge there that will help guide it into the hole depending on the position of your door. It's going to include 4 screws, 2 long and 2 short. The short screws are clearly for your strike. The long screws are to get through the body here and here down into the door. Okay. If you are buying this, you are probably just simply replacing either a broken item, or it does happen, you're replacing the item because you're changing the finish. I think this client probably is replacing it because it's damaged. And the client also bought the 12-inch extension, which I have back here. So I'm thinking that this client is replacing the top, and this would be the bottom bolt in the installation, is what I'm gathering by looking at the manifest of the order. Okay. Now, let's switch to the screen view where we can take a look at some supporting documentation quickly and then wrap this up. Okay, so this is the item that we're looking at, and dimensional property listed down here below. We've covered all that. There's a link to the cut sheet that's here, and that's just what would be a cut sheet, or a tear sheet is what would come out of the manufacturer's full-line catalog to give you an overview of those items pertinent to the item, which we've already covered. There is a link here to the manufacturer's page, which is handy because it will allow you to review not only all of the Cal Royal products that we sell, but also a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to their full product catalog, and some older catalogs as well. There's a link to the A117.1 document, which is the handicap usable. It's the guideline for accessible and usable buildings. ADA, Americans with Disability Act, is federal law. Why we have it in the Cal Royal area is because Cal Royal does sell some components that would fall under the umbrella of mandatory compliance in terms of how they're applied to a public space, and thresholds are what come to mind. Cal Royal may sell grab bars. I wouldn't be surprised if they do, but thresholds very much come into mind with that. Template master index is here. Well, that's a large document. Let's see what happens when that loads. Okay, so we paused that video to give that a minute to load. 1,569 pages of installation instructions. That's pretty cool. And it is indexed so that you can do a find function on your keyboard. That's pretty handy. That's really handy. A lot of information there, to be sure. So let's wrap up this video on camera. The name Cal Royal is synonymous with decent quality imported builders hardware from Asia, not China exclusively. Certainly, they're pulling material out of other countries as well. I'm not aware of all of them, but I know it's more than three or more. If you are a commercial contractor, I think you'll do well with their exit devices, their door closers, and their hinges. Lock sets as well, whether it be grade 1 mortise locks or it be grade 2 levers, or inexpensive tubular design that you might do in, track housing, things of that nature, which would make you not commercial. If you're a residential contractor, there you go. Tubular lock sets, they have a broad diversity of choices in terms of designs and finishes. If you're a residential client, I would look at their replacement flush bolts, their builder's hardware. They have a variety of material that is of decent quality, decent value, and it's generally in stock. And while they have a minimum order, and this client's material of just 2 flush bolts was well below that, so we put it on our weekly stock order, or however that's sent in. And your material will come to us, and then we will ship it to you. So Cal Royal does a fairly decent job. They generally exert themselves in most instances to assist. Their catalog, I can tell you, 25, 30 years ago was about that thick. It's a binder now. It's a pretty epic document now, because they continue to evolve, develop, bring into, augment, amend their catalog continually. And they're quite comprehensive in what they supply. There's no question about that. If you have any questions on the Cal Royal FBG6 US3 flush bolt, single route flush bolt in polished brass, or any other Cal Royal product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.